Imagine 3 explosions tearing through 3 cities at the exact same second. The ash, panic, and destruction are physically identical across 3 different continents, but the aftermath of each blast takes a completely different path. One explosion dominates international headlines for a month. The second gets a brief mention on a scrolling news ticker. The third is documented only by local humanitarians. And the fourth? It never reaches your feed at all. Who decided which of those explosions actually mattered? We tend to assume our screens provide a reasonable, objective window into global events, but what you see is actually a highly filtered environment, sculpted by reporting costs, government access, and the hidden math of digital algorithms. When a crisis stops getting coverage, the violence does not stop. The cameras simply leave, and entire populations are effectively rendered invisible. The media ecosystem demands stories that are easy to digest. That requires 2 recognizable sides, a clear beginning and a straightforward conflict. It is a frictionless narrative. A crisis like the one in Myanmar defies that clean structure. The reality on the ground involves a military government fighting a democratic opposition, alongside numerous regional defense forces and long-standing ethnic armed organizations. Because you cannot compress that multi-layered reality into a quick 30-second update, audiences get less explanation, rather than a better one. The complexity itself acts as a cloak for ongoing violence. You might naturally assume that a disaster of enormous proportions would completely override that need for simplicity. Sudan proves otherwise. The fighting between the Sudanese armed forces and the rapid support forces has trapped civilians in a collapsed state. Nearly 20 million people are experiencing acute food insecurity. 14 million people have been driven from their homes. Yet, because the conflict lacks a simple geopolitical angle familiar to Western audiences, a catastrophe of historic proportions is quietly filtered out of the global conversation. This brings us to a second major filter: geopolitical utility. News organizations prioritize conflicts that have clear political and economic consequences for their primary audience. Take Lebanon. When it does make the news, it is almost exclusively discussed as a stage where external powers, Israel, Hezbollah, Iran, and the United States, conduct their disputes. This framing entirely sidesteps the people who actually live there. Local Lebanese civilians are the ones suffering the physical consequences of destroyed bridges, hospitals, and water systems from decisions they never voted for. We often write off these overlooked conflicts by incorrectly assuming that they are simply too far away to ever impact us. The decades of violence forcing millions out of places like North Kivu and Ituri are deeply enmeshed in international smuggling networks, state competition, and the global supply chains feeding consumer electronics worldwide. The products you use every day are tethered to these exact regions. The geography might be distant, but the economies are intimately connected. Even if a journalist successfully reports on a complex, distant war, the story still has to survive the final filter: your digital feed. A severe humanitarian update goes live, and it is immediately buried by celebrity gossip, sports highlights, and memes. Social platforms are engineered to optimize for predicted attention and profitability. The sorting math ignores death tolls or historical significance. One recognizable face with a personal story will usually generate a massive emotional response, but a statistic representing 2 million displaced people fails to trigger that same engagement. The sheer scale makes the suffering feel abstract, and when the violence grinds on for months or even years without an obvious resolution, viewers gradually begin to tune out. The repetition of trauma normalizes what should be an unacceptable crisis. A government does not need to physically censor a conflict to make it disappear. It just has to wait for the story to lose the digital competition for human attention. This is a matter of physical survival. Public attention is a tangible currency. When millions of people focus on a single region, it forces action. Awareness buys humanitarian donations, international sanctions, diplomatic pressure, and open borders for refugees. The inverse is equally true. When a conflict slips out of the public eye, the diplomatic and political costs of allowing that violence to continue drop to zero. The United Nations has even had to create a specific spotlight initiative for places like Congo and Myanmar, simply because global institutions know these extreme catastrophes routinely fail to break through the noise. So when one war prompts a massive international outcry and another becomes a forgotten statistic, we have to ask ourselves, are we responding to the actual scale of human suffering, or are we only reacting to the version of it our screens have taught us to recognize?